Hello everyone, Sidewin here, and today I am going to be answering the question I have on the screen here. Where can someone find an image for their tabletop RPG character? Like a character in a Pathfinder or Dungeons & Dragons game. The options I'm going to be listing today, some of them you may have heard before. Alright, so I'm going to give a quick warning here. I'm not giving real legal advice here, I am not a lawyer, but I feel like I should mention this. If you stream or record your tabletop RPG games to put on, say, YouTube or Twitch, most of the things I'm going to show today are not allowed. Explicitly, commercial use is disallowed for a lot of these. So be careful if this applies to you. If it doesn't, basically just ignore what I said. So, some quick locations you can find images already drawn of characters that you can then use for your tabletop RPG game. Note that this whole video, I'm assuming you don't have a lot of artistic talent, like I do. But some quick places I've found useful to find images of characters. They're particularly useful for GMs, as we don't have a lot of time to draw an individual image for each, or to create an image. These are often the places that if you're looking for an image, you will go. So first off, I'm going to mention the ones that pretty much everyone's heard of. Pinterest is a social media platform which basically just has a lot of images, which are tailored to what you like, depending on how you create it. All of these have algorithms. But Pinterest, DeviantArt, and then Pixiv are all relatively well known for this. Pixiv is basically Japanese DeviantArt, and it's affiliated with a few other websites. Instagram's also fairly well known for this. It has some art on it, and you can follow certain artists who might have the art you're looking for. A final social media place I want to mention is certain subreddits. My favorite for this is Our Reasonable Fantasy. It has images of female characters in non-sexualized outfits, which are otherwise kind of hard to find, admittedly. So these are various places you can look if you don't want to make your own. But what if you do? So now I'm going to go into various ways you can make your own, starting with the obvious, video games. I don't recommend you just buy a game because of this in general. However, it's very likely that most people watching this video own at least one video game, making this a fairly good option for a lot of people. So, the most popular option, which I see mentioned a lot, is RPGs. Examples are Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, all the Dragon Age games, Baldur's Gate Free, and a couple of MMOs, such as Black Desert Online, or Final Fantasy, I don't know what the number is. These are commonly mentioned, and they can create good options, especially for humanoid characters. A less well-known option is basically just most games with character creation. One that I personally like is Crusader Kings Free, although it's one that people are less likely to have because it has a very realistic character creator, specifically for human characters. It can create very realistic people of pretty much any ethnicity with a couple of mods. The final thing I'm going to mention is The Sims. This one's also mentioned fairly often when the question's asked. The Sims 4 is free, and it has lots of custom content for this. I personally like the earlier games for gameplay and images, honestly. But before you just go get The Sims 4 and a bunch of content, I'm going to give a quick warning here. Within the past year, The Sims 4 has had hacks on both of the major mod distributors, CurseForge and The Sims Resource, I think. There are a few others that have also been hacked, so you should be careful and pay attention to where the compromised situation is. Just giving that warning before anyone downloads malware. So now I'm going to go into things that are specifically character creators. All of the options I'm going to mention are free to use. They do not necessarily allow commercial use, just reminding everyone. And I am less experienced with a number of these options, but I am fairly familiar with a few of them. Some of them I'm looking at them from a beginner perspective. So these are specifically for making characters. The first one I'm going to show is Hero Forge. Many people have heard of it in the RPG community because it is a miniature creation website. All the options which are made on it can be purchased already printed, or you can buy an STL off the website. Note that's when it becomes not free. If you want free, you can just take a picture of whatever you make. So a major pro of it is that it has very extensive options. You can make almost any character you could plausibly be playing in a tabletop RPG. It's specifically for tabletop RPGs. And it's very simple for beginners because it's just picking and choosing. It is also web-based, so you don't have to download it. These things can make it very, very accessible and useful. However, one con that's commonly mentioned and why a lot of people look for other options is the art style. It's very, very set in a very, very particular style. You can't create other options with it. And this is often considered a major downside of using Hero Forge. A lot of people also complain that they are very, very tempted to purchase what they've made. So if you have very little self-control, you would want to keep that in mind. This next option I'm going to mention is going to sound kind of silly, but it's a website known as Doll Divine. Essentially, it's the equivalent of modern Flash games. It has a collection of dress-up games, many of them in the sort of things that you would assume, oh, these are for kids. But they can actually be quite useful for just creating an image. They're very easy to use. I haven't found a single one that isn't. Although they can be slowed to load, which is the downside of being web-based, they are web-based. And you can browse through the large variety, there's over 100 options, and it can create many different images. However, a major limitation of it is that customization is limited per game. There's a art style that's very, very common, and most of the games are in 2 or 3 of them, namely anime, chibi, and Disney sort of thing. I don't know how to describe it. The image shown here, I just threw together in it, and it is an example of the art style that's the most common. However, it works very well if you're trying to create a female character. It also has a bit of a dearth of masculine options. There are a few for if you want a K-pop looking character, though, or an anime love interest. Those are available. So, next one I'm going to mention is the character creator. This comes up when you search character creator, and it can create an image relatively easily. I'm not a fan of this one, just to be clear. But some major pros of it is it has masculine options. It has a lot of masculine options that are very easy to pick. It's also browser-based, and it's also pick and choose. You can change the colors of certain things. However, I really do not like the interface. It has ads covering half of it a lot of the time, and the female characters that it creates are often awkward. That's the best way to phrase it. I've played around with it a little, and it generally makes fairly awkward female characters. It also only makes humans and humanoids. So yes, you can do elf ears, but it's not going to get your centaur. Doll Divine has a few options which might. And the final 2 options I am going to mention now are both solely humanoids as well. You can't really get more creative. The first one I'm going to mention is probably the most complicated software on this list. It's called MakeHuman. If you've ever heard of Blender, a open source 3D modeling software, MakeHuman is a plugin for it which allows you to easily create humans. That's why it's called MakeHuman. It has a wide variety of ethnicities and ages, which is something that a lot of the other programs I've mentioned struggle with. Like, it's very hard to make an older character in any of the other programs from what I've seen. However, downside to MakeHuman is that it is very, very, very complex. Like, the initial just downloading stuff and plugging it in, since there are a lot of options, is relatively easy. But to do anything more advanced is much harder. And if you want a non-humanoid, you're going to have to open Blender, which is also very complicated. However, if you've got 3D modeling experience, these could be the ideal program. Or if you want a very realistic, very easy to, use an animation type of thing, because this is an animation software as well, Blender. The final one I'm going to mention is Vroid Studio. This is probably the program I have the most experience with, and the model I'm using right now is actually made in Vroid. So a pro I like to mention with this is you can create a decent model in 10 to 20 minutes or less, potentially. The lower model over here, I made in probably about 10 minutes. This was literally just throwing things together on the fly. It has a lot of different pre-made options, and it's easy to make a couple of additional textures just by drawing in. every single creation option in the program is drawing based. The upper model, I probably made in about 2 hours, if I'm estimating my time correctly. However, these two do highlight a major limitation of the program. It has a dearth of body variety. It doesn't really, like, if you wanted to make a fat or a curvy character, it's harder to do that. It also has difficulty with masculine characters. Like, I have had to, the very first time I tried to make a masculine character, I got told that looks like a girl multiple times by everyone. And the final limitation it tends to have difficulty with is making characters who look older than their mid-20s. So you should keep these in mind. It also just makes anime characters. It cannot make anything that is not anime, and it also cannot make non-humanoids. However, since it's drawing on everything, if you just have problems drawing the human form, like I do, it works quite well for that. That is all for today. If anyone has an additional option they'd like to add in the comments, feel free. And I can answer any questions about these programs that you might have, although I have less experience with some of them than others. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.